This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Chamber's November monthly membership meeting. I'm Justine Paradiso. I am the Marketing Programs Manager at the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce, and I am so happy that you've all decided to join us today. As you're joining, we ask that you turn on your cameras as you are able. Go ahead and mute yourself, and then when you have something to contribute, you can unmute yourself as well. So we want to make this as engaging and interactive as possible. Before we begin, I want to thank our sponsors who make this event possible. Our ultimate presenting sponsors, Medical Associates, Midwest One Bank, Q Casino, and TH Media. And our platinum partners, Anderson Windows and Doors, Cartograph, Collins Community Credit Union, Digital Dubuque, Envision, Fidelity Bank, Forge Social, Grand River Center, Grand River Medical Group, Holiday Inn, John Deere, Mercy One Dubuque, Stonehill Communities, Town Square Media, Unity Point Health Dubuque, and US Bank. A virtual round of applause to all of our wonderful sponsors wherever they are. I love it. Today we are going to hear from Don Sandel, the founder of Go Positive, on positivity during challenging times. This is an interactive presentation, so a reminder, turn on your cameras, get ready to be engaged and be interactive. We are going to learn we're going to examine how our brains are under distress, how we can counter that negativity bias, and learn the 6 steps to mind shift, the key to sustaining positivity for the long term. Don has a Master of Arts and Bachelor of Science from Western Michigan University. Since graduation, he has amassed a number of highly specialized certificates in human performance improvement, training, leadership development, coaching, and applied positive psychology. Don's expertise in the field of leadership development, as well as the impact of shifting to a positive mindset. He is a sought-after speaker on the topic and has been published nationally. He has spent a quarter century leading talent development and has thrilled thousands with his energetic keynote on shifting to a positive mindset. Please give a warm chamber welcome to Don Sandel. Don, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Justine. That was lovely. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for taking time. I know you probably got 1,000 things going on, so I appreciate that you're here, focusing on your health and your well-being. Look, this is what we do. We make that link between a positive mindset, the right mindset, and higher performance. In fact, a thriving and flourishing life. So that's really what we're going to be covering and talking about today. But I want to get you involved right away. So if you can move your cursor to the chat function, and I've got a question for you, and I want you to think about. I almost hesitate to ask this, but I want you to think about the last 7 or 8 months. And it's been indeed, right, unprecedented times. And again, I kind of hesitate to even go through this, but we've dealt with the pandemic, health issues, economic instability, social strife, and all of our work environments have gone through some sort of a change. So here's my question up on the screen. Think about that environment in the last 7 or 8 months. What has been, and go ahead and put this in the chat, send it to everybody, just 1 or 2 words. What has been your predominant emotion? And I want everybody to not only put it in there, but then take a look at what your colleagues are writing. So first of all, Margaret puts overwhelmed. Yeah, Dawn, anxious. Good, stronger than you thought. Good job, Karen. This idea of feeling disconnected, anxiety. Yeah, scared a little bit. Boy, I hear those things loud and clear. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to ask a couple of probing questions on this. So Dawn put anxious. So Dawn, if you don't mind unmuting yourself just really briefly, thank you. Anxious. Where do you think? Where does that come from?
My gut.
Yeah. And what's driving? What do you think is driving that feeling of feeling anxious?
Uncertainty, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, uncertainty with health of people that I know, what's going on in the political environment, uncertainty with my own job,
Yeah.
family members. I mean, just a lot of like things that are changing, COVID related and non-COVID related.
Yeah, that's an interesting word. You're right. We're in the midst of not only unprecedented times, but probably unprecedented change. So Dawn, thank you. And I think that's an apt word that you put there. Margaret, if you don't mind, you put the word overwhelmed, and I have to tell you, I've done hundreds of these types of sessions, and that's probably the most frequent word that people put out there. Where do you think that feeling of overwhelmed for you comes from? Are you there, Margaret? All right, so this is what I want to do. First of all, I want to empathize with where you guys are at. These are indeed unprecedented times, and I completely understand where you are at and how you are feeling. In fact, you should own those feelings and not apologize for them. In fact, this is what I want to say. I want to validate those emotions. Feeling not okay during these times is okay. But hopefully what you're going to get out of today's mere 45 minutes is, what is the power of a positive mindset and how can we sustain that for the long term? So feel free to take notes and feel free to jump in, unmute yourselves, since there's under 20 of us. Seriously, you guys, let's make this as interactive as possible. I want to share with you the 3 things that I know for sure since I've been doing this research. First of all, the obstacles in our way are most often self-imposed. Does that make sense? Shake your heads if that one makes sense. That the challenges in our way, the obstacles in our way, we're the ones who tend to put them there. Back in the 40s and 50s, medical science said that if man broke the 4-minute mile, he could die. Not being melodramatic, but that's what they said. But in 1954, a guy by the name of Roger Bannister from the UK broke the 4-minute mile. And it was iconic, right? It made all the newspapers, it made all the radio play at the time. But that's not what's most compelling about that moment. What's most compelling about that iconic event was that in the next 13 months, 6 other people broke the 4-minute mile. They gave themselves permission to perform at their highest. They got out of their own way. So my rhetorical challenge to you is, what are your 4-minute miles? And what are your beliefs, your mindsets that actually get in your way? And hopefully you're going to discover some of those as we go along. The second thing that I know for sure is that the Dalai Lama says that our purpose for living is to be happy. But what the Dalai Lama doesn't tell us is that having teams that are positive, having a positive mindset is indeed a competitive advantage. In fact, every relevant business metric goes up when we have individuals in teams that are positive. And finally, the third thing that I know for sure since I've been doing this research is that we are better in every domain of our life when we are happy, optimistic, and positive, or what I call HOP. We are more focused, we're more disciplined, we're more innovative, we're more creative, we're actually smarter. Get this, our IQ goes up when we have a positive mindset. They've done duplicated studies with students and they primed them to be either positive, neutral, or negative before taking math achievement tests. The ones that were primed to be positive always did better. Surprise, surprise. We have better memory, we have better recall, we're better able to leverage the full power of our brains, and we literally open up the learning centers in our brain when we're happy, optimistic, and positive. So that is the foundation of what we're going to be covering today. And I want to encourage you to take notes, and I want to encourage you to jump in with any questions as we go along. But in a way, because I asked you about the last 7 or 8 months, you might say that we started on a negative note. So I want us to pivot. I want everybody on this call to pivot to a more positive mindset. And I want to share a quote with you that I've had in my archives for literally about 4 or 5 years. I finally have the perfect slide to share this quote, and it's from Helen Keller. And she writes, Although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it. So we will overcome this. As human beings, we have an incredible ability to adapt, to overcome, and we will do that. We will do that with a positive mindset. We'll do that together, and hopefully with the 6 steps to positive mind shift. So with that, let me go ahead and get started and just share with you kind of just this general idea, the power of a positive mindset. I want you to know this, and I want you to know this and get this, that it's more than just a social virtue. What we're going to talk about today is based on about 25 years worth of validated research. And that when you have a positive mindset, it becomes a multiplier for all your other skills and capabilities. In fact, and this is really key for you to buy into this, is that we actually go through physiological changes. Our brains change, our guts change, our tissues change, our chemicals change, our neurons change when we have and embrace this type of a mindset. So again, it's not just this social nice thing. Don seems like a nice guy, so I'm going to buy into it. No, it's really based on some solid research. And finally, on the screen, you should see my email. Give me a thumbs up, you guys, if you can actually see my email on the screen. I would love it if there's any, because we're only together for about 45 minutes. If there's further information that you want, or any survey that I talk about, or study that I talk about, if there's anything further that you want, just drop me a note. I'll be happy to send it to you. So let's have a little bit of fun with how powerful our minds are, and we'll talk a little bit about the placebo effect, which some people call the lie that heals. There's a study done in Japan, and the study participants were all highly allergic to poison ivy. But what they did is they took a completely benign leaf and they rubbed it on the arms of their subjects. Completely benign leaf. Every one of the study subjects ended up coming up with a rash. Completely benign leaf, power of our minds. For those of us getting into our 50s, I love this next study. There was a Baldness Study, and they, of course, had 2 groups. They had one group that they gave the pharmaceutical remedy to, and then the other group they gave a placebo to. The group that they gave the pharmaceutical remedy, 86% of them, grew new hair. Here's the fascinating thing. The placebo group, over 40% still grew new hair. It is about the power of what we tell ourselves. And finally, I'm curious how many on the call, at least those that are courageous enough to show their videos, how many of you guys exercise on a regular basis? Give me a thumbs up. Good for you. Fantastic. Okay, I see you shaking your head. Good for you. Thumbs up. Awesome. But I love this study. Again, they had 2 groups in this study, and they said, okay, hey, group 1, go to the gym and keep working out. The other group, they said, look, you don't have to work out, but use that time just to do mental imagery of your workout. Fascinating study. Physical strength increased 24% through mental practice alone. Now, you'd love it. You'd love it if I were saying, okay, you don't have to go to the gym anymore. I'm not exactly advocating that, but the whole point of these fascinating studies is that our mind is fascinating. And if we can get to the right mindset, we can produce positive outcomes. And maybe this is really just a summary. This sentence is a summary for what I'm talking about. It's not the events in our lives, but it's what we tell ourselves about those events that really matters. What do we tell ourselves? And the research tells us from Cornell University is that 80% of our self-talk is negative. You guys, we need to change that. But here's the beautiful thing. As human beings, we can actually think about our thinking, and we have to change that. We have to move away from self-talk that is negative to self-talk that is positive. All right. So if you don't mind, I want to share a little bit of the neuroscience, a little bit of the research. I promise I won't get too wonky, but this is really powerful and important for you to kind of buy into this topic. So let's first talk about a negative mindset and what happens. I love it. We got more people joining on video. You look great. So on a negative mindset, when we have succumbed to all of the negativity that is out there, right? 24-hour negative news cycle. My God, stop watching the evening news. If I can give you any advice, stop watching the evening news. But if we succumb to all of the negativity that is out there, many of our brains, even some of the people that are on this call, are under distress. And the key to this is that the primary function of our brain is our survival, not our life satisfaction. So maybe your conscious brain hasn't paid attention to all of the brain threats and the negativity and the danger out there, but I promise you, your subconscious brain has paid attention to it because that's its job. Its job is to keep us safe, but that means that our brain is in distress. That means that our limbic system is probably in charge. And the limbic system is the emotional part of our brain. It is getting us ready for fight, flight, or freeze. And the problem with that is that then when we have this negative mindset, we tend to be led by higher emotions. The emotional part of our brain is in charge. And then we have less impulse control. When we have a negative mindset, think about this. We literally have less physical, cognitive, and social emotional capabilities. We don't have the capacity in our brains with a negative mindset to do simple things like build relationships, build partnerships, have empathy for other people, right? Because our brain is focused on those dangers that are out there. And finally, when we have a negative mindset, we have a higher death rate. We don't deal with things like stress, anxiety, fear, depression as well. We have poorer health and we have a weakened immune system. And this, of course, is the last period in our lives when we want a weakened immune system. All right, so that's the dark. Let's walk into the light. And let's talk about what happens when we have a positive mindset. So first of all, no longer is the limbic system in charge. Our prefrontal cortex is in charge. That's the newest part of our brain. That's the rational, effective, efficient. It's the executive function part of our brain. So we tend to therefore lead with a more rational mind. We have better impulse control. When we have a positive mindset, we literally strengthen our physical, cognitive, social, emotional capabilities. That means that you have the full power and capacity of your brain. That means that you can do things like build relationships, build partnerships, have empathy for other people, which probably for most of you is the cornerstone of you being successful in your jobs. And finally, when we have a positive mindset, we lead a longer life. We deal better with stress, anxiety, depression, fear. We actually can handle those things better. We have better health and we have a stronger immune system. So as you can see, it's more than just a social virtue. It's really, gosh, when I really achieve positive default, not negative default, I'm different and I'm better in everything that I do. Okay, so Justine, if you could just briefly, if you could unmute everybody, I'm assuming you can do that. Or if you guys can unmute yourselves, this is what I want you to do. Despite all of the negativity that has been out there for the last 7 or 8 months, I know everybody on this call has had positive moments. I want you to think about one positive moment in particular, whatever it is. Whatever it is, I want you to pull that out of long-term memory, move it into short-term memory, and actually savor that positive moment. Give me a thumbs up if everybody has that positive moment in their mind. Okay. savor that moment. Because the way our brains are designed, the brain does not want to hold on to positive moments unless it's really emotional. The brain doesn't want to hold on to it. It doesn't want to waste room. But when we have negative moments, the brain wants to hold on to it because it thinks it can learn from negative moments. We need to savor those positive moments more. So if you guys don't mind, if a couple of you would share, and I don't have your names on my screen, so I can't call you out, but if somebody would be vulnerable and share, what's that positive moment that in the last 7 or 8 months you just recall that you're thinking about?
I will.
Was that just you, Justine?
Go for it, Erica.
All right. I experienced what I call a COVID hug, in which I was visiting a business in Fenimore for work, and just meeting this person and talking to her and sharing, our experiences with our jobs and our work and how it was affecting our families. She actually gave me a hug and apologized for it. Here's basically two strangers that have never met, but for some reason you just connect with people. And I really feel that we were put together at the right place at the right time. She obviously needed a hug. I obviously needed a hug as well. And it was like one of those hugs where you don't pull away right away. You just hug, you feel the moment, and then you back off. And then she apologized. And I said, you know what? Don't apologize. We had our masks on. We weren't doing very well with social distancing, but it was just one of those moments that was really cool because I think everybody could probably use a hug from a stranger every now and then.
Yeah, and the research tells us that we actually hanker for that. As human beings, we are social creatures and we need that. And of course, that's been disrupted lately.
Right.
Erica, thank you for that story. Another story of that positive moment that you experienced despite the last 7 or 8 months.
I'll share. Actually, just a couple of weeks ago, my daughter turned 2, but 5 months prior to that, we thought, okay, we need to probably start thinking about potty training. So got her own little potty. And the first night we had it home, she sat down and she peed on it. And you know what? I was like, first of all, she was 19 months old, so I just assumed she's a genius. But yeah, so I mean, there's so much going on in the world, but that's the stuff we celebrate in our house is using the potty.
I didn't think that's where we were going to go today, Justine, but thank you for sharing.
Yep, that was my joy.
Awesome, Erica and Justine, thank you for sharing those stories. I absolutely love it, and that lifts all of our spirits. In fact, let me validate that. Give me a thumbs up that when you got a chance to pull that out of long-term memory, move it into working memory, and just savor that for a moment. Give me a thumbs up if this is true, that when you thought about that happy moment, you felt happy, you felt positive emotions again. At least validate that was true. Good. Most of you are good. And that's exactly why we do this. Now, if you don't mind, let me go into a little bit, just really quickly, about what happened in your brain and why everybody, when they do this activity, and I've done this in front of a crowd of 2,000 people, and we've exchanged stories, and people feel elated afterwards. And it's because, when we feel positive emotions, we don't just feel them because we're feeling them. We feel positive emotions because we get a release of certain neurotransmitters, okay? So they enable us to feel good. And the brain, know this, the brain does not distinguish between experiencing the moment and experiencing the memory. The brain does not distinguish between the two. So when you moved it from long-term to short-term memory, the brain goes, oh, I guess we're experiencing this again. And it released those happy chemicals to you again. And most of you should be familiar with most of these happy chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. So when we are feeling positive, when we feel these positive emotions, we get a release of these neurochemicals. But keep in mind, the brain changes, the guts change, our tissues change, our chemicals change, our neurons change. It's fascinating. We go through a physiological change, and that is what helps us to make positive outcomes because of this mindset. It's incredibly powerful, but it's not just emotional. It's physical. We go through a physical change. And if there's any thesis that I can share you guys, it's this: that when you have this HOP mindset, you're better in everything that you do. It becomes a multiplier for everything that you do in your life. So let's take an informal poll. I'll be really curious as to how this turns out. So let me set up the poll, you guys. So years and years ago, before I started this Go Positive business, I was running leadership development for a very large global company. And I reported to the global head of HR. Now, she was very bright, she was very capable, and incredibly influential. But she and I had a very different leadership philosophy. So she says to me, she says, "Okay, Don, at our next HRT meeting, I want you to share your leadership philosophy." On the day that I was to present, she and I passed each other in the hallway, and she scowled at me and she said, "Okay, Don, today's your big day. Don't blow it." So you can imagine what that did to my psyche. And I had this incredibly negative mindset. This is the truth. That afternoon when I presented, it was one of the it was one of the worst presentations I ever gave. And I attribute that to I had a negative mindset and it produced negative outcomes. So here's my poll question to you. Jump into chat and just answer yes or no. Just answer yes or no to this question. Have you ever experienced this before, that you had a certain mindset and it produced a predictable outcome? You had a negative mindset, produced a negative outcome. You had a positive mindset and it produced a positive outcome. I'm curious. Let's just take a poll. Yep. Heather, Sarah. Yeah. Jenny, everybody has experienced this. Very, very interesting. Thank you guys for jumping in and doing that informal poll. So this is what this tells me. Not only did we see what the science said, that we are different and better and produce positive outcomes when we have a positive mindset. That's what the research tells us. But even the experience in your own lives tells you that your mindset produces predictable outcomes. If you have a positive mindset, you're going to produce predictable outcomes, a positive outcome. So how does that translate to what we do? Can we therefore say that if we have positive people in our organization, positive people on our team, that positive teams have business impact? The answer is categorically yes. I see some of you shaking your heads. Awesome, well done. And that is absolutely true. And I've done some of the research for you. So take a look at this. That when we have positive teams, we increase productivity and performance. We're more efficient. We're 10 times less likely to take sick leave. And there's multiple reasons for that. One, we're healthier because of a positive mindset. But two, we're more energized and we're more engaged, and we actually want to show up at work. And finally, and this is important probably to a lot of your organizations, that when we have positive teams, our high potentials want to stay in our organizations longer. This is really, really powerful stuff for our organizations. And quite frankly, if I can be so honest, why Go Positive in our business is doing so well is that we are really moving the needle on culture and engagement. So, all right, so that's the setup, you guys. That's the setup that hopefully drives us to an understanding that, yes, Don, I'm buying it. I'm different and I'm better when I'm happy, optimistic, and positive. Now, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to run through the 6 steps to positive mind shift. I wish we could spend a whole half day on these because they're really powerful. But I chose these 6 steps. There's a couple dozen of them, but I chose these 6 because they interrelate with the brain and because I think they're the most practical. So if any of you are taking notes, now's your chance to take notes. And these are going to be really action-based. So the first one is this. And this is, by the way, the only one that's in order. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 step. We can't meet our goals unless we set our goals. So this first one is really about just sitting down right now saying, yes, I want to become a more positive person, and I'm going to do so intentionally. So step 1 is really just that mindset that says, yes, in the future, I'm going to strive to be better at this. And you can't do it without a goal. So there's my template goal for you. So if anybody's taking notes, write that goal down. My intention is to be a positive influence and a positive leader. Write that down. And we're writing that down as a template. Now, if that works for you, keep it. Put that as a recurring event in your calendar. Put that up on your pegboard, but keep that in front of you. But if that doesn't sit perfectly with you, great. Then massage that goal. All right. Remember, we can't meet our goals if we don't set them, and that's the first one. Step number 2, and we kind of touched on this earlier, that we need to socially reconnect. The work environment is absolutely a social environment. We have a very social need as human beings to connect with each other. It's part of our genetic code. And right now, because of COVID and work environments, it's a challenge, isn't it? Isn't it a challenge to really connect with other people? Not everybody like Erica is getting these wonderful hugs from complete strangers, and we need those. So here's my challenge to you. In the next 2 days, I want you to reconnect genuinely and authentically with somebody who's near and dear to you. Now, it can be work related, it can be personal, but in the next 2 days, you're going to reconnect with somebody. The second thing on step 2, the second action I want to encourage you to take is this idea of acts of kindness, or AOKs. Now, we know that when we do acts of kindness, that is good for the broader community. It's good for society. That should be motivation enough. But I also want you to know that if you're the person doing the acts of kindness, that you actually receive benefits as well. One, they call it the helper's high. Remember those neurotransmitters that I talked about earlier? Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, GABA. When you do acts of kindness, you get the helper's high and you get a release of those neurochemicals again. But here's the other benefits. When you do acts of kindness, you actually lower your blood pressure, you lower your stress, you lower your anxiety, you mitigate your pain, and you actually mitigate the negative effects of the stress hormone cortisol, which all of us these days have surging through our veins. So in the next 2 days, you're going to reconnect with somebody authentically who you really need to. And 2, you're going to commit to doing an act of kindness. All right. So step number 3, and again, we could spend a half day on these, you guys, and I do when I do my workshop. But we really need to do a better job of taking care of our brain, okay? And so we're going to talk a little bit about diet, exercise, and sleep. So let's first talk about diet. What's good for our body is good for our brain. And listen to this. The conditions of poor diet actually damage our brain. In fact, if we eat bad foods, especially like polyunsaturated fats, and we're obese and we're not eating a healthy diet, we're actually slowing the processing of the neurons in our brain. So another motivation to really take care of our brains. But let's do this imagination exercise together. Okay, We're still talking about diet. I want you to imagine your typical dinner plate in front of you. Your typical, it's a big white plate. It's your typical dinner plate sitting in front of you. Now, if I were doing this 15 years ago, the biggest thing in my plate would be a big animal protein. It would be meat. It'd be just a big hunk of beef. Now, since I've been doing all this research and data, I've come to the conclusion that too much animal protein is probably not good for us. Now, I'm not saying go vegan, do whatever you want. But what I am saying is don't let in that imaginary plate in front of you, don't let the biggest thing on that plate be the animal protein. Now, I live by this credo that the smallest thing in my plate is going to be the animal protein. And I've gotten really good at making wonderful salads. I've gotten really good, these great recipes on cooking vegetables, eating more beans, eating more walnuts, great for the brain. And I also do this for the sprinkle effect. We all need more antioxidants, eat more berries. But here's the sprinkle effect. If you want more antioxidants, sprinkle more oregano and cinnamon on your foods. There's your antioxidants. If you want to lower the inflammation, which is the reason for most chronic illness, is inflammation, more ginger, more turmeric. Just sprinkle that stuff on your food when you're cooking. All right, so that's diet. We're going to relook at our plates and we're going to produce a more colorful plate. Let's talk about exercise. Now, I asked earlier how many of you on the call exercise, and it was most of you. Good for you. Keep that up. But I want you to be further motivated to improve, do a little bit more exercise, okay? Because with exercise, it is the #1 way to grow new neurons in your brain, exercise. It is the #1 way to rid your body of the harmful effects of the stress hormone cortisol, exercise. It is the #1 way to promote blood flow throughout your body, but in particular into your brain. You want a young, healthy brain? Remember, your brain starts dying once you stop using it, once you stop learning. So keep learning. But the #1 way to a healthy brain is blood flow. #1 way to blood flow, exercise. Okay? Exercise boosts your immune system. Exercise makes you smarter. If you exercise before tests, you're always going to do better on the tests. And here's a very interesting thing about exercise. If you want to combat, and a lot of us are dealing with this these days, we're dealing with anxiety, depression, and fear just because of what's going on. Now, you can take pharmaceuticals, and many of them work very well. But they've done duplicated studies where they compared exercise to those pharmaceuticals. Not only was exercise just as good in terms of outcomes, but no side effects, and the effects of exercise lasted longer, combating things like anxiety, fear, depression. So think about doing a little bit more exercise. And then finally, let's talk about sleep. Sleep is very powerful. We need to get more of it. That's when we recoup, when we regenerate, and when we consolidate our learning. Get more sleep. And I'll wrap up this thought with this. When you sleep and you have a long night's sleep, 7 to 8 hours, you give your brain enough time to cleanse itself. Spinal fluid actually goes into your brain, takes out the dead neurons, takes out the toxins. That process takes about 7 or 8 hours. Get your sleep. Okay, as I told you, I'm going to be racing through these. So the gratitude exercise. There are many reasons for gratitude. In fact, if any of you study any positive psychology at all, one of the main things that will come up is gratitude. Now, when I give keynotes, when I do my workshops, I get pushback on this from a lot of business leaders. They go, Don, you had me, but this is kind of soft. But think about how the brain works. The brain loves new novelty, new trends, and new patterns. And if for 2 months you do the gratitude activity, the brain starts to catch on to this new trend, to this new pattern, and it starts to develop a habit. And if you do it for 2 months, the brain takes over and you don't even have to think about it. Your brain does it on its own because you created a new habit. Here's the gratitude activity. For time purposes, you guys, we're not going to do it now, but I'm going to tell you what the gratitude activity is. Take a moment to pause and write down 3 things that you are grateful for. One of them should be a person. That's the gratitude activity. And if you do that for 60 days, your wonderful subconscious brain will take over and you'll naturally be thinking more positive. One key point, don't do it every day. Dosage, like pharma, is important. If you do it every day, you'll stop doing it. So put it in your calendar to do the gratitude activity about every other day, every third day. Do it for 60 days. Positive thoughts ringing through your brain all the time. Okay, now, next, step 5, the concept of mindfulness. It is so powerful, you guys. No longer is it just for people who study Eastern philosophies. Notice I'm not wearing a flowing robe. I haven't lit any incense that you know of. So I really want you to think about the power of mindfulness. It literally rewires the networks in your brain. It unclutters your brain. It is so healthy for your brain. But for me, the best part of this is it stops the mind wandering and it helps you to focus. So let's do this exercise really quick for those that are on the call. We're going to do this exercise really quick. And when you are mindful and when you're doing meditation, here's the key. Don't worry about what your brain is doing. All you need to do is just focus on your breathing. So please sit in your seats. I see most of you are sitting. Sit there comfortably. Put your feet firmly planted on the ground. Put your hands on your lap. And because we have a trusting environment, close your eyes. And all you're going to do is you're going to pause. You're going to focus on your breathing. And I'd like you to take, in a moment, I'd like you to take a really deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Go ahead and begin now with your deep breath, really deep. In through your nose. Exhale out through your mouth. All right, this time, just focus on your breathing. You're going to do the same thing, but I want you to activate your abdomen and the full capacity of your lungs, not just the upper quartile. And then when you exhale, exhale everything out of your lungs. Ready? Deep breath in. And exhale everything out. All right, everybody, let's do one more because we can. Focus on your breathing. Deep breath in. And deep breath out. All right, so for those of you, go ahead and when you're ready, open up your eyes. I want you to look into the camera for those of you that I can see. And you guys, we did that for under a minute. And I'm curious, for those of you that I can see, and for kicks, the rest of you, how many after doing that for under a minute felt more calm afterwards? Give me a thumbs up. Good, good. That is the power of doing that. All right, so do that more. Focus on that at least once a day. And then we're going to wrap up with step number 6, and it is perhaps the most pragmatic of them. We talked earlier that about 80% of our self-talk is negative. You guys, that's way too much. That's a study by the National Science Foundation and Cornell University. 80% of our self-talk is negative. We need to change that number. And we can do that because as human beings, we can think about our thinking. Animals can't do that. We can. It's actually called metacognition. So we need to get better at thinking about our thinking. And when we catch ourselves in negative thought, reframing to the positive. So we're going to do an exercise together, and this will be our last exercise. So I want you to look at the screen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 3 different pictures. Each picture, obviously something occurred. I want you to tell me, so Justine, if you would be so kind and unmute everybody, I want you to first, when you look at this picture, tell me what negative thing occurred. And then I want you to reframe it and then tell me something positive that occurred, okay? Are we able to unmute everybody?
I hit the button and I'm just kind of going through right now, and anybody who it didn't work for, I'm sending them an unmute request.
All right, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you jumping on. So, all right. We're going to look at a picture. Tell me what's negative.
She dropped her ice cream.
Yep, what else? What else is negative about this situation?
Very unflattering angle. Your head looks huge.
All right. So there's the negative. That's where our brain goes first. But I don't know why I'm echoing.
I think someone's probably got it on their computer and their phone possibly, so they might be getting feedback that way.
All right, if you can find out. There you go. All right, now let's reframe this, and we can do this every single day, you guys. We need to change those negative thoughts to positive. Let's look at this again and go, okay, well, what's the upside of what occurred? Go ahead and unmute yourself if you have the answer. What's the upside of what occurred?
The upside is that it's vanilla and not chocolate.
What else?
Oh, Karen put in the comments that it's less calories, less exercise. So I'm guessing you won't need to exercise as much to work off that ice cream because you're not eating it.
You got it. I love it. I love it. That's the way we need to reframe. Okay. Justine, if you would go ahead and mute everybody, and we're going to go and we're going to follow that person, and we're going to put our answers into chat. So I'm going to show you another picture and tell me the negative. What's the negative of what occurred? Here we go. Here's the next picture. What's the negative? Go ahead and put this into chat. What's the negative of this happening? Yeah, you don't have a job. Yep, job loss. What else? What happens when you lose your job? What else is the negative? Yep, not going to be able to pay your bills. You're not going to have money coming in. Loss of income. You're going to feel less of a person, unable to take. Good. All right. Yeah, Erica's going to be bored. No, you won't. You'll keep yourself busy. All right, so let's change that and go, okay. And by the way, this happened to me once, 2010, 2 weeks before Christmas. And I got to tell you, it was the best 6 months of my life almost. Let's reframe this to the positive. So what? We get laid off. What's another way to look at this? Opportunity. Cody, you're spot on. More time with family. Karen, a new opportunity. Yes, beach time. You guys are exactly right. And that's exactly what I did is I saw the layoff as an opportunity. 5 months later, I got even a better job. That's how you have to interpret life events, right? It's not about the events that occur, but it's what you tell yourself about those events. And finally, let's do it again. We'll do this one really quick. What's the negative thing that has occurred here? And it is a bad breakup. What's the bad part, the negative part of a bad breakup? Put it in the chat. Yeah, sure. You go through heartache. You're hurting. It's painful. It's sad. What else? Single life can be tough because you're alone. Sure. Sure. Loss of a good friend. All right. Now let's reframe this. Let's reframe this and go, okay, so we had a breakup. What's the upside to a breakup? Let's reframe it. More time to yourself, fresh new start. Girl night out. Absolutely. So, yeah, Paris, here I come. Good for you, Karen. I like the way you think. Fantastic. You guys got it. We need to get better at this concept of reframing. So I'm going to wrap up this concept of shifting to a positive mindset. And our action on reframing, again, is not being perfect, but being better. Let me switch this over so I could see your beautiful faces. And I'd love to take questions, just so you guys know, this is what we do. This is what we do for a living. We do these online for a couple hours. We do them in person, but of course, nowadays, what's been keeping us busy has been online. So I'd love to answer any questions that you might have.
I just went ahead and unmuted everybody, so feel free. If you don't have a mic, feel free to put it in the chat and I can read it out for you. But while we're waiting, I just want to say thank you so much, Don. I was taking notes the entire time. There is so many tidbits of information that I will definitely start applying to my daily life. And I really like the idea of doing the positive things that you're grateful for every 3 days. I think that's wonderful. I'm definitely going to do that.
And remember, you guys have my email address there. If I can give you further information, if there's a study that you find intriguing and I can give you the study, any of that types of stuff, I love doing that and I love helping people. That's a whole reason we started this company.
Just so everybody knows, we are recording today's session and I will be sharing this on the Chamber's website, dubukechamber.com. So if you want to rewatch any of this or share it with your colleagues, this will be available to all Chamber members. Don, message from Karen Olson saying great session, and Dawn Eykamp says thank you to Don and to me. Well, I didn't do much, but thank you, Dawn, for the thank you.
And Justine, would you send out to everybody the infographic?
Yes, that you provided me with the 6 steps. Yep, I will share that after this is completed. I'm actually going to steal the screen for a second, Don, so I promised a prize to someone, some special someone. Let me see. Presenter. So I have everybody on here that was attending, and twice if you were someone who had your camera on. So I'm going to go ahead and click to spin here.
Oh my gosh. You got to send that to Justine.
That's fancy.
Oh. Karen Olson. How exciting is that? You just love a good wheel of fortune right there. Karen, I will get a hold of you because you've won yourself a gift certificate to a Chamber member business.
Congratulations, Karen. Can you feel that release of all those neurotransmitters?
I mean, there was confetti and everything, guys.
Super exciting. I never win anything. I love it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. Oh, well, thank you all again. I don't see any questions coming in, but if you have any follow-ups, please make sure you get a hold of Don, and we will also have his information so you can get a hold of me at the Chamber. Thank you all so much for coming. Please check the Chamber website, dubukechamber.com, for more upcoming events. And we are so pleased that you all chose to be here today. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Take care.
everybody.
Bye-bye.